One of the flyers in the window there reads, again, sorry about the reflection, honor trans immigrant lives. Which, okay, honor all lives, not to trigger all those people out there. Like, what do you mean you can't talk about all lives until the people who are least privileged and most historically undervalued are protected? I don't agree with that, but I get that sentiment. But it is this adding trans into other discussions, which is something we talked about 2 summers ago, during the summer of George Floyd, during the summer of over 100 consecutive days of protests, which turned into 100 consecutive nights of violent riots in the city of Portland, where trans just gets entered into every discussion and then becomes central. And you might argue right now, it's Pride Month, it's just that. No, sorry. No, that's not what's going on. So honor trans immigrant lives. That's just odd, right? Like what a niche group that is.
How many people are we talking about?
How many people are we talking about? Okay, so next flyer is protect Black trans sex workers. Also very niche. Also adding another group to the mix, sex workers, which is, yes, more susceptible to violence in their lives, and also not just work as people involved in advocating for quote unquote sex work insist. It is different, and it should not be treated the same way as a secretarial job, for instance. But I will also point out the amazing irony of the security alert for our video surveillance right next to the Protect Black Trans Sex Workers poster, which is on the storefront, which has across the top a faux billboard that reads "Abolish Police." So presumably they've got some private company, or it's not for real, right? But if this is for real at all, if they really do have, it actually says 24 hours, it's not 4 hour. They just didn't catch it on the screen here. 24-hour video surveillance. If they've got anyone showing up, then we're talking about private security. Then we're talking about mercenaries, basically. And this is what we want. We prefer our protection to be in the hands of only those who can afford it, like used to be for instance, the fire department, and only to happen when you happen to have thought in advance about whether or not you had a risk, as opposed to having fixing the problems with police forces, which police forces recognize have existed. There are power problems. There have been racial problems. All of this is true, but they exist for all of us. They exist to serve all of us. They are funded by all of our tax dollars, and they are supposed to be working on all of our behalf, unlike private security, which to have that security alert 24-hour video surveillance posted on the same building that says "Abolish Police" strikes me as a particular kind of 21st century confusion that I didn't see coming.
Yes. On the other hand, it seems to me that the poster that has been put in the window here, like the others, is effectively bait. Mm-hmm. The answer is, what are your choices with respect to such a poster? Mm-hmm. Would you like to spell out what your objection is to protecting Black trans sex workers? Do you believe that Black trans sex workers are not vulnerable?
Are they not human?
Are they right? Is it that they're Black that makes you indifferent?
Right.
So the point is, one has to have a very steady mind in order to figure out how to correctly raise the objection, and it still isn't safe to do.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real point is, it's visual sophistry. The point is, it's an invitation to a discussion in which, at best, you will survive, mm-hmm. right? Likely, you will trip over one of several booby traps in the visual presentation and the claim.
And, I never saw anything this extreme in terms of the nichification of the groups about whom we are supposed to care until the last few years. But before Evergreen blew up, when we were still at Evergreen, and there was the Black Lives Matter nichification of progressive stack, demographics that you were supposed to care about stuff. When I would see things about, it's it's the Black femmes on campus who are most at risk. Like, are there two of you? You know, like seriously.
And at risk on
and at risk of what? Like, no, you're not at risk, and there's two of you, and you're just the two people who have identified yourself as this. Like, you're just making stuff up. But also, it felt like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not going to go there because it's going to be too easy to paint me or anyone who raises objections to therefore hating Black femmes,
right,
or Black trans sex workers or trans immigrants. Like, no, that's different. And I think you have actually nailed it. That this is visual sophistry. This is design sophistry. This is PR. This is sophistry as PR and marketing. And even those of us who can see it for what it is, largely, we have to choose our battles. And we say, oh, okay, fine, go ahead and fight your fight for Black trans sex workers. And I guess at some level I'm saying, this is beyond absurd. These, I don't know exactly how to make the analogy work, but this emperor is long since naked. And we need to stop pretending that the people who put abolish police and protect Black trans sex workers are actually interested in a society that treats all human beings equally, because they don't.
Well, that's the thing about the sophistry, though. And this is why I keep pointing to this particular uniting thread, is that the problem is actually in the burden and threshold of proof. That by leveling certain arguments as if they are credible arguments, the basic point is, well, you would have to beat this argument in order to prevent the natural conclusion from arising. We should be investing in protecting Black trans sex workers. Well, that is not a slam dunk, because the question is really one of what is how do we protect people who are vulnerable best, right? How do we distribute the resources for that? And it is very easy to become obsessed with certain things. And, for example, if we look at something like mass shootings, which are obviously catastrophic, but our focus on mass shootings is bizarre in light of our failure to focus on, for example, iatrogenic harm from medical errors, right? Because what is more likely to kill you? That's a runaway win for iatrogenic harm. Yeah. And yet it's not compelling because you don't see it happen in the same way. Yeah. So, the point is we have to figure out how to say, I'm actually not required to meet that argument, right? The burden is on you to establish that this is a reasonable standard by which to apportion limited resources, right? From the point of view of minimizing harm or maximizing good or whatever it is that you're trying to do. But the burden's on you. It's not that as long as you can phrase an argument that it's going to take me 5 minutes to explain what's wrong with it, right? You win unless I invest the 5 minutes and you're compelled. That's not how it works.
And by making a claim that we need to do X, what have you just undone of the other things that society had already agreed we need to do? And too often we aren't shown the thing that we're now going to lose. And then when you do raise the thing that you're going to lose, you say, see, again, you're not caring about protecting Black trans sex workers. So I would say, forget about the trans part of this, forget about the Black part of this. I don't care if you're trans or not, and I don't care what your race is. One thing that I care more about than protecting sex workers is protecting children. Children there are a lot more of them, and they're inherently innocent. And I want to protect children from being exposed to sex workers and sex work. And that incidentally includes things like, and this is a broad definition of sex work, and there will be some who can legitimately disagree here, but that includes things like burlesque and drag shows and peep shows, which many drag shows turn into. Children should not be exposed to this. This is something we had all agreed on until yesterday. Sex workers' rights to perform burlesque or whatever it is that they want to call it, or to engage in quote unquote sex work, and I don't like that term either, cannot infringe. If we can put aside, do they have that right? Claim that they do, assert that they do for the moment. That right cannot infringe on the more important and more fundamental right of children to never be exposed to that thing.
And again,
just as we made a point of never talking to our children about suicide until they were old enough, and we're not going to talk here about like what that means, and people will disagree about exactly what that boundary is, but we protected them avidly from any conversation, any exposure to the concept. And some people won't be able to because their children unfortunately know it all too close, but most children do not. There was no reason to put that into a child's mind. Similarly, there was no reason to put into a child's mind the idea that people are exchanging sexual favors for money, to put sexual activity into their minds at all, to put into their minds that they could become, that the little girl could become like daddy when she grows up. No, she cannot.
So again, the question is, the argument is a feeble one on the other side. It is sophistry. So the point is, feeble as it may be, it's going to take some work to explain exactly what's wrong with it. And what's wrong with it in the case of burlesque and things related to it and children is that the upside of exposing children to this is essentially zero, and the potential downside is massive. So the point is, given that this does not require an argument from those of us who would like to protect children, the point is it's a slam dunk. Even if the other side was right, what's the value in it? Yeah. So
there's so much in this world. There's so much that we were unable to expose our children to. There's just so many opportunities. There's so much nature. There's so much art. There's so much music. There's so much literature. There's so many things, and gardens, and just so many things that children can spend their time marveling at the wonders of the world. And there's no way that sex shows should be on that list. And
But this brings a number of things together, because the point is, A, we all agreed on this until 5 minutes ago for a reason. Right. One, it's obvious. So 2, is it incumbent on us to explain why it can't suddenly become okay, right? Even if you thought it might be okay, you wouldn't assume it was okay in light of the risk, right? But the coerced consensus around this means that it's actually happening. We've gone from everybody agreeing that it would be wrong to have a child at a burlesque show to a state in which it is now presumed to be okay. And if you say, hey, wait, still not okay, then the point is, oh, what kind of bigot are you?
Yeah, you live in the dark ages, man.
Right. And so, the problem is sophistry is not a well-understood concept by most people. And so saying it is sophistry works with an audience that's been brought up to speed or knows the term already. What do we do so that we can put the burden of proof back where it naturally goes in argument after argument, right? Because that's what's happened is by leveling these sophist arguments, they have flipped the burden of proof, and it's very effective, right? It doesn't make their point any better, but it makes it more powerful, and that's the thing that we have to figure out how to repel. But I don't know what to do, because again and again, it's like, oh, I can see the flaw in that argument, and I'm gonna explain it. And it's like, cool that I can explain it, but the really important point is I don't have to, right? None of us have to. These are not good arguments, even if explaining why they're bad takes 5 minutes.